Welcome to the first video Noisextra podcast. I'm Gray Holger, here with my co-host Tara Connolly.
Hello.
And Mike Connolly.
Hello.
And the fine people at the Tusk Festival have asked us to discuss Newcastle's own The New Blockaders. And I don't think any discussion of The New Blockaders could really happen without first discussing the manifesto a little bit.
I think it's as good as a place to start as any. So, Tara, will you read us a little bit from the New Blockaders manifesto from the album? And Tara, please say it so that I don't have to.
Changer les bloqueurs. So it just means change the blockers. So New Blockaders, change the blockers. We are the New Blockaders. Blockade is resistance. It is our duty to blockade and induce others to blockade. What is blockading? This. It's time for change. Make way for the New Blockaders.
Absolutely make way for the New Blockaders. And what a statement on a record that is so important that to this day it is still one of the most important records of our time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The 1982 was the year, self-released, and it started in a way what we think of as noise.
Absolutely. It made an impact that, we're still feeling today and, started certain models that people are still using in their releases now.
Now, it wasn't the first noise record, but in a way...
Yeah, we could argue about what the first noise record was for hours, and we're not going to do that.
But we talked to Ron Lessard of RRR Records about his thoughts on the New Blockaders and about this album.
A noise legend himself.
Absolutely. And this is what Ron had to say. It is widely regarded as being one of the first LPs of what we call the noise scene. Certainly it wasn't the first noise LP. There are numerous examples of noise pre-TNB. But this LP became a focal point for a small group of individuals who heard it, identified with it, and became inspired by it. Suddenly after its release, small pockets of individuals around the world starting their own noise projects, started contacting, networking with one another, and after several years coalesced into what we now consider the noise genre. Was this LP responsible for noise as we know it? Maybe or maybe not, but it was definitely a touch point for the embryonic years of noise. And I think that is very well said.
Yeah, that's right from someone who was there and who was also inspired by this record to start a record label, to start making noise, to become a part of this. And we often credit Ron as being such a big part of the movement from the 80s and on. And here he is talking about how important this record is.
Absolutely. And this record is the essence of noise in a way. It rejects anything that came before, anything and everything that came before it. The first New Blockaders record rejects. It rejects music. It rejects art. It rejects rejecting.
That's true.
Yeah, and it's so many elements to it that, people are still coming to today. Like, especially as a young person, you may think that you thought of having anti-art or anti-art or having music without an instrument or music without lyrics or having no track titles or even self-releasing. But, these guys.
That's right.
They, started that model.
And as they would say, even anti-art is art.
Absolutely.
And that's why we reject it. Because where this seemingly comes from, the anti-art of the Dada movement.
Yes.
Things leading up to this record that are then rejected.
Yeah, I mean, so much noise was influenced by Dada. I mean, not just noise, but like so many art forms, so many artists were influenced by Dada.
But that's
and
art.
Exactly. And then what is so interesting about the New Blockaders is they reject that. So they say even Dada's institutionalism, even Dada's setting rules, they're even setting boundaries. And so what they're looking for is something that doesn't even have the boundaries set by Dada, having no object, no objectionism, no individualism, no collectivism, nothing.
Once Dada became part of the museums, it became what they would say in their manifestos, the museum relics.
Exactly.
We were talking with Dominic Furnow of Hospital Productions and Prurient about his thoughts on the New Blockaders. And in our discussion, we were talking about how while Throbbing Gristle rejected punk, they still made music.
Yeah, they had songs, song structure, drum machines, synthesizers, guitars. It's industrial music, but it's music.
They still had United.
Mm-hmm.
The New Blockaders rejected Dada. So they rejected the anti-art.
Yes.
Because it's still art.
They're not even anti-art.
There's no electronics on this record.
No, there's not.
There's no electronics on a lot of these early records.
There's no instruments.
Who knows what it is?
It's a thing I've often thought about, fantasized, wondered, tried to picture, daydream. What are they doing on this record and many others? And there's clues, there's hints. You might hear a piece of metal far off in the distance. You might hear a hammer smashing a floor. You might hear furniture being rearranged. It's impossible to tell. There's little things you can guess at, but it's all put together in this way that is uniquely the New Blockaders, and such a unique thing to their breed of noise and their breed of rejecting music.
And we keep saying noise, but this is before noise was noise.
Right. Before noise as a genre, as an easy tag to describe the sounds that we love. A lot of things that we really like. This laid the foundations for.
This is feral sound. Gray, before we started recording and we were listening to the album, you were talking about how you really appreciate the silence on New Blockaders albums, and I thought it was interesting. So can you speak to that now?
Yeah, they're not it's not a project that I think is full of silence, or minimal is certainly a word that could maybe be used, but it's not sparse. It's not empty. It's full of sound. But where I hear the silences are the in-between spaces, in between each scribble, drag, sound, clunk, squeal, and in between the layers of those sounds. So while it's constantly moving, it's New Blockaders are as much about the rocks inside the rock tumbler as the air between them to me, and the drawing a line down and back up, that moment when you change direction and there's a small pause. That's the sounds that I find that are part of the New Blockaders that are really important. And those are the silences in there that aren't actually silent, but they're these pauses in the sound that contribute to what it is and what makes it such a unique sound, especially on these records, such a unique form of music, for lack of a better term, right?
They're not using any effects. So it's so wild that the sound is like, if you hear concrete scraping or something, it's probably just concrete being scraped or metal being dragged. Yeah,
there's sounds that are like further off in the distance, and there's reverb on it because of that piece of metal is being drug in a room and it's further from the microphone, and you're getting those reflections. It's not because there's a reverb unit in the corner that they're sending the little sound to process it. All these sounds are concrete sounds. All these sounds are very visceral, very tactile sounds they're using, and they all come together in this layer, this mess that, you know, it could be the scribblings on the cover making the sound, it could be something being drugged, but it's the pauses and the spaces between those things happening where the New Blockaders really shines to me. It is the spaces between in some way.
It's physical.
It is physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you're getting that. This is physical. Dominic Furnau also was saying that the New Blockaders are anatomical. And whereas it's the mind versus body. And this is the body. This is body. This is physical. This is hammering the basement floor.
Yeah.
This is smashing the concrete. This is completely rearranging and taking away any sort of preconceived notions or conceptions of recording sound.
And I can see where it just activates your imagination when you're listening to it, because I mean, I assume that we all have destruction fantasies at some point, you know, like I like to listen to noise when I'm sitting in traffic. And then I can just picture like every car being like swept away in a tornado, or being able to like fly over top of everybody, or just like hauling everybody out of the way. But, you know, it's just some points in your life you have just this like just fantasy of chaos and destruction. And I think this album really fulfills that want. It's just like such a feral, such a primal desire in all of us.
Absolutely. And not only this album, but many of the New Blockaders albums.
I think the frustration and destruction felt as in something like being in traffic or whatever is paired alongside of this expulsion and this release that the music also has. It's an ecstatic sound as well as a destructive sound. And it's a cacophony, you know, it's this ever changing, ever growing thing. We've all listened to this record a lot. We listened to it. I've heard it a few times today.
Absolutely.
Like maybe 4
on different stereos.
Yeah.
And in addition to, of course, just, you know, immersing ourselves back in the Blockaders for, leading up to talking about this.
Yeah.
But it always sounds different, and it's not a record that you can memorize. It's not a record you might have a favorite part, but you're giving yourself over to chaos when you're listening to it. You're not expecting, there's no song structure. There's no form to it. What there is constant sound and movement and change, right? Like the title says, this is a change. It's a call to action for a change, and the music itself is in a state of constant flux.
Yes. And there, like you said, you almost forget it right after it happens. And then you go back and it becomes something different. And then you forget that. And then you listen to it again and it becomes something different. And then you forget that. And it's just never ending cycle. And even the way the record is, I mean, it starts, it's these two chunks on each side, and there's no ebb, there's no flow. It just is. And I think that's one of the incredibly powerful things that the New Blockaders helped define going forward in what would become noise. And
exactly. And it's so interesting too, because the sounds lack structure. Like all the sounds lack structure. The tracks don't have any structure, but the manifesto on the album, the art that's, you know, referential of other movements, it's almost like a paradox of its own, because when you look at it, you think this is going to be some heady enterprise, and they reference like Dada and nihilism and other, like, you know, I'm not going to go through all of it, but lots of like even architectural movements, and then you turn it on and it's nothing. It's chaos. It's everything.
It's everything. It's nothing. It's the rejection of everything that came before. It's the rejection of everything they're talking about in the manifesto. It's a rejection of reading a manifesto. It's the rejection of reading. It's the rejection of sound.
It's the rejection of consistency and reason.
Yes. And it's absurdity.
Yeah.
And it's where even the farce is a farce.
Yes, absolutely.
I dare say it's absurdly serious and seriously absurd at the same time. It is a duality, and rejecting is, of course, it's so ridiculous, but it also makes sense, and it makes more sense when you're listening to this record.
Absolutely.
And I do think that it's really easy to read the manifesto and get lost in it, you know? And I like that idea too. Like if you really just sit down and try to say like, I'm going to figure this out and make this work. Like I remember the first time I saw this album and tried to read it, and I hadn't heard it yet. And I was like, what's going to be on the inside? I had no idea. And then you put it on and you're like, oh, amazing. Like perfect. I don't want anything else on the inside. This is what needs to be on the inside.
It truly does. And of course, another very important document related to Newcastle has to be live at Modern Tower.
Oh, my.
Absolutely. The first live performance of the New Blockaders live at Morden Tower, an institution in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And a perfect summation of, 1 year later, 1 year after this record, you have this first live performance, and it's everything that the first record is, and it's also different. It's also something new happening, and it's something existing in a live space instead of just existing on your stereo, you know? I mean, to imagine to be at that performance and to soak in those sounds in person is just it's mind-boggling to me.
The physicality is taken to another level. Experiencing the New Blockaders live in person through audio is an important way of experiencing the New Blockaders.
I would agree.
It is a visceral thing to behold. And it still rejects the ideas put forth by regular music concerts, venues, even though they do perform in these traditional venues and stages.
Yeah, but there's an obfuscation of identity that goes along with it, wearing the masks, and you're never sure exactly who the New Blockaders are, right? I mean, we have Richard Rupanus and Philip Rupanus at the core, at the heart of the Blockaders from the very beginning, but other people have been involved throughout the years, like numerous people, and you're never quite sure what you're getting and who is responsible for which actions, which sounds, which performances, which records at all when you're getting something from the New Blockaders. There's obviously an orchestrator behind it, but the mystery and confusion of it extends into rejecting sort of the ego of a musician,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and rejecting the typical stage presence of a rock band and someone easily identifiable.
Exactly. And even down to the way that they can utilize the stage or utilize the audience or where they're going to set up, or hey, if the power goes out, they're still going to play. They're still
Right.
going to bang.
And they might like that more if the power goes out. Like, or will the audience take over and do the entire performance for them? Like, who knows? That's a New Blockaders set.
Right. And I think that's one of the powerful things about the New Blockaders, the anonymity and the taking away, the erasing of the ego and focusing purely on the sounds that they're making, whoever that person is making.
Yeah.
And
1 second.
Leave it in. Ah. And you know, there's like this there's some voyeuristic joy that you can get from watching destruction, even from participating in chaos. Like, what is it within ourselves that's being fulfilled by, you know, listening to this album, by observing somebody destroy something, and having no expectations about what you're going to behold, like there's some sort of like just deep human element that really seeks that out. And, sometimes I'm like, oh, we're damaged and that's why we love noise. I don't think that's true. I think that we are just in touch with those parts of ourselves that want to see the destruction.
It's not just noise listeners. I don't think there's a person who's ever lived who hasn't stolen a glance at the car crash when they're driving by.
Yeah.
Like, there's no every single one of us. You're in traffic and you hate to slow down from a car accident, but you look out the side window when you're driving past it. You want to know what happened, and that's part of that fascination with destruction that's within all of us.
Well, Tara, you and I were discussing the idea of destruction and what destruction can express.
Yeah.
What were some of the things you were?
What can it fulfill in us?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's saying it a little better. What can destruction fulfill in us, Tara?
I'm actually going to look at my notes. I made notes. Your dissatisfaction, like hearing something be destroyed just feels so nice. Just like when you're in traffic, frustration with overcomplication, with just wanting to turn it off, like not wanting to participate anymore, just saying like, no, wanting things to stop, the want of nothingness, and just the joy of breaking things. Like truly, I think of like when we were young and we had our first warehouse apartment and we would just sit on the front step and break bottles against the empty warehouse in front of it. And why is that so fun? Like it was great.
It
like,
really was.
I don't know. We were just like, if we knew it was abandoned, we knew that warehouse next door was going to be torn down. So we would just sit and like aim for the windows, and then like when you hit it through, it was just so satisfying to like watch everything explode. Like it's just, I think it's just like in us, it's thrilling.
It was a great time, and it was how we got rid of glass bottles by throwing them at the empty building across the street.
Well, you guys were frequent guests of my warehouse home back in the 2000s, and lots of things got broken and lots of holes got knocked in walls, and it's a compelling thing, destruction.
Well, it's different when it's inside your home for sure. But,
look, some of us choose to live a little closer to destruction than others.
But noise is destruction, and the new Blockaders embody that.
It's true.
And
very true.
Another really important artist who embodies that is GX Jupiter Larson.
I mean, when I think of the new Blockaders, I often think of GX and the Haters in the same thoughts.
Again, there is that idea of anonymity. You don't always know who's on stage with the Haters.
Yeah.
You don't always know exactly what the sound sources are, or sometimes you do, and when you know what they are, it is destruction.
Right.
It's still confounding.
It's destroying. It's destroying records. It's destroying funnels.
One of my favorite Haters performances is on the Haters Live DVD, and it is a group of masked haters inside of a bus with crowbars and such.
Oh, I love when they tear by the bus.
It's a very new Blockaders. I mean, it's obviously the Haters, but of course, it has so much in line with the new Blockaders as well, and it makes so much sense to me.
Absolutely. So, of course, we had to talk to GX and get his thoughts about the new Blockaders. So this is what GX Jupiter Larson had to say. It all started back in 1984 when Merzbow told Richard Rupinis that he should contact me. So out of the blue, without warning, Richard sent me a copy of his Pulp 7-inch on Airplane. At that time, I didn't know who Richard was. It was the first time I had ever heard anything by either the New Blockaders or Organum. It blew me away. It's still one of my all-time favorite noise releases by anyone. Since then, there hasn't been a month gone by where Richard and I haven't been communicating back and forth. This whole time, I've heard from Richard more often and more constantly than any other person involved in noise. He rode on the same 1947 Indian chief that he had stole back when he was a teenager. When I played the record for him, he just looked at me and said it sounded like Richard rode a Honda. I understood. Wildcat just had a very different interpretation of nihilism from Richard's, but I love them both.
I love that.
Well put.
Well put, GX. And what a beautiful way of discussing the New Blockaders and Richard Rupinis and his interpretation of nihilism. And discussing the New Blockaders Organum Pulp 7-inch is a good time to discuss the fact that the New Blockaders did do collaborations and work with a number of
So many people.
legendary artists.
Yeah, I mean, really shortly into, you have the first record in 1982, but by 84 you have this, you have the collab with Organum, you have the collab with Coil and the Vortex campaign. Another UK artist being Coil and Vortex campaign out of Belgium.
Exactly. And of course you have the New Blockaders Vortex campaign record that this is, well, not an official release, but I think in a way it's very fitting for the New Blockaders. Destroyed Records.
Yeah, a couple layers of Annihilated Records as record cover, and it's such a tactile, heavy, weighty object to reference the sounds within, I guess, and the act of destruction so inherent in the New Blockaders sound.
I love that you can find it in your stacks easily.
Oh, it's about as wide as 4 records.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
But even the anonymity, I said that word pretty crazy.
I love when you pronounce things
Yeah,
crazy.
Anonymity. There you
Perfect.
Damn.
Yes.
I did it.
Pulled it out.
Of the release of this record is very fitting
Yes.
for
Yeah.
the New Blockaders.
Absolutely.
Another person that the New Blockaders would work with would be Andrew Chalk, Ferial Confine.
Yeah.
One of the classic records here.
Yeah, and that record is from 1990, but Chalk sort of later became accredited member of the New Blockaders towards the mid-90s on the TNBS Mort set and a couple other, like a live performance, live at Morden Tower in 94, I think, which is on the Gestam Nixwerk set. And so started as a collaborator and then became a member, which, it's another form of collaboration, I guess. But and Ferial Confine, of course, standing on their own for the a similar kind of sound, working within the realm, so it makes a lot of sense for them to collaborate together to me.
Definitely. And New Blockaders would work with Organum, David Jackman, multiple times.
Yep.
So they would these collaborations are as exciting as their standalone records.
Oh, fully agreed. As essential to the catalog as any single New Blockaders record.
And it's great to hear what the other artists bring to the table. And while you may not even know exactly who's doing what,
right?
In especially on the Vortex campaign collab, you do maybe hear some loops. And maybe they're natural loops. Maybe they're naturally
swirling loops.
Right. But again, it's always cloaked and camouflaged in lack of information.
It's always stimulating our imaginations.
One of those things that I would most closely liken to the New Blockaders in sound would be Karl-Heinz Stockhausen's Microphony record. But that's played to a score. That's a academic
I'm rejecting
scored
it.
piece of music.
I'm anti that. Rejected.
Utilizing these scraping banging, smashing, crunching sounds, but it's performed to a score, and the new Blockaders are completely against that, but still using kind of a similar sound palette in an even more chaotic and jumbled way. And so, yeah, here maybe there's some loops, but maybe it's someone scraping in a circle, and that's why you're getting these loop feels.
Natural loops.
Yeah.
That's what I like to call
That's a
it.
new term. There we go. We just
Natural
invented a
loops.
natural loop.
Yes,
That's it.
absolutely.
Anything swirly.
We also spoke with Chris Cienko of As Loud as Possible magazine, a great writer, about his thoughts on the new Blockaders. And one thing that he discussed was the idea that so much noise and noise artists come from other things. This is also something that Dominic discussed on our episode with him, the idea that you come from metal. You come from jazz.
Yeah.
You come from punk.
You had an interest that brought you to noise, that led you to noise.
Yes.
Exactly. But these are Chris Cienko's words. TMB sidesteps all of that. Seemingly no industrial influence, no power electronics, no academics, no Lou Reed, no Airway, no. It was all a mess of their own. The first internationally recognized mess for a mess sakes. It's amazing that it took two brothers in a tool shed to finally come up with noise for no purpose. But they did. And I don't think you can call it anything other than a transformative moment in time.
I mean, Chris is really well researched in noise, and we've had him as a guest on many episodes of the Noisextra podcast, and this is just an astute observation from him, as always. Like, it truly is noise with no purpose, and that's such a beautiful way of putting it and realizing it, and obviously in the purposeless way that the new Blockaders even saw it, right?
Absolutely. And again, this isn't Metal Machine music. This isn't what came before. It's rejecting all of that. It is anti all of that. And I think Chris really got it down to that essence of noise with no purpose.
Yes. And, maybe that is an element in why it is inspiring for so many people, or it was at the time inspiring for so many future noise artists.
Right.
Because you got to frame it in the way that you chose to frame it. And it didn't necessarily have to surround a movement. It didn't have to surround a thought process or something that was systematic that already existed. It could be something that you define yourself.
And you define your own definitions.
Exactly. You define your own noise.
And maybe the new Blockaders would be anti your definition, but that's all part of it.
I think we're all making our own rules here, and I think that's what the spirit of Change the Blockaders, right? That's what that is each person to come to it has their own set of rules and approach and ideas about it, and we don't have to agree with, or adhere to any of those, and they don't have to adhere to ours.
Yeah, what are you blockading? Change it.
But there's some classic records other than the first record.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I always think of the symphony records.
Yeah.
Those are some of the, again, it's furthering what they started
Right.
with the first record. And you go into Symphony in X. Is it an X minor or X major? I get them mixed up.
I think it's X minor and
an
O major.
I do always.
Yeah.
But you know what? Hey, you know what?
Hey, fact check us. Let's find out.
Or I reject your facts.
Well, there we go.
Whenever you tell me that those true titles of the records are, I'm against it.
Well, those keys don't exist anyway. So,
But they
the
do.
amount that it matters.
But
well,
they
now
do.
they do.
But they do exist.
Now they exist.
And they exist on those records.
Absolutely.
And I think of those as being some of the mandatory new Blockaders documents.
In inventing those keys again takes me back to someone like GX Jupiter Larson inventing his own units of measurement and making a ruler.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's in such the same spirit to me, and Yeah, if those do exist, then what are the scrapings, scribblings, and scratchings and thuds that we're hearing? Is that's in the key of X or O? You know,
The world's a much more interesting place when you destroy it and start over. Of the New Blockaders is integral to the entire world of the New Blockaders, whether or not it is packaged and destroyed records, the amazing collages.
it all stems from more creation through destruction, the collage of using other materials, the sort of juxtaposition of imagery and sloganeering that they use almost in a like strange advertising sort of way, and the destroyed records making up a cover for the thing. And it's, I think, one of the reasons you don't find the New Blockaders on various artist compilations really is because there's a very specific way in which the material is presented to you, and that generally includes the artwork is going to look a certain way, it's going to have a certain feel, it's going to contain these images, and that's something you can't really get as part of a larger compilation. You have no control over what the other artists are doing. So while there are collections of New Blockaders material and collaborations, those are all specifically engineered to me, and it's different sort of thing than a various artists compilation or something. And a lot of these collages, that you see so many recurring themes with these photographs and these like snippets of text and pieces from books, and even the sort of burned, scratched out, scribbled out, overlaid, painted
even of
over.
their own works.
Yes, making artwork and destroying artwork.
I always think of the TMB Est Mort covers as being some of the finest examples of their art. I also have always loved the Live at Anti-Fest cover.
That's really nice.
I think it's so truly...
Oh, can they see the vinyl, I wonder? Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it truly is the New Blockaders to me.
We see, one of the things we see on these when we're holding them up is there's faces, there's human form on a lot of these. Even looking at Live at Morden Tower, you've got faces on there, and it's the humanistic approach for something that's so removed from, it's never the face of a band member, it's unrelated to something that is creating the sound. And that's an interesting thing for me too.
And sometimes it's even images of things that they are rejecting or that they are anti.
Yes.
Right.
But it's done in this way where maybe it's the collage is expressing that.
Yeah. They're giving you a really multiple contexts in which to think about and listen to their sounds. Like, I think that's what's so provocative about what they do is that, they give you maybe not a title, but certainly a concept behind it that you're going to have to spend some time thinking about, especially in the context of the sounds you're hearing.
Agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely. But, what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, this is in direct defiance with some of the concepts that they have discussed in their art.
I've been feeling conflicted with it all day.
Yeah, look at us. We're institutionalizing.
Are we doing the same thing that the Dadaists did when they put their works in museums? Are we...
When they sold their works of art.
The museum relics? Are we the problem? Do we need to be blockaded?
Yeah.
You think we do? Or you don't know?
Therein lies the paradox.
I'm unsure. I'm truly unsure.
Well, maybe we need to listen to the album again. You think that'll help?
Well, I think it'll help.
Well, I just think that maybe even us doing this podcast is doing the New Blockaders a disservice. And maybe you should disregard and ignore everything we've said up to this point. Destroy all these notions.
Yeah.
Destroy all these thoughts.
Forget what you've heard.
Destroy everything. Embrace nothing. Change the blockade.